everybody, welcome back to Taji's World of Books and welcome to what I've been reading for the last week. Hey you guys, so welcome back. So today I am going to be talking to you about all the books that I have read over the last, I'd say 2 weeks, more or less, because I didn't do one last Friday, so this is a combination of what I read last week and what I read this week, and so it's a lot of books, and so we're just going to talk about all the things. Okay, so having said that, without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so the first series that I want to talk to you about, and I don't know if you guys remember, but I had mentioned before that I was going to be reading a lot of Corinne Michaels books, and I've read a lot of Corinne Michaels books because on the last Audible sale, I just went ham and ordered a bunch of her books, and because they were all like on sale for like, the audiobooks were on sale for like $3 an audiobook or something like that, and I hadn't read any of her stuff, and I should not do this to myself, but at the time I was doing this where I hadn't read authors and I would go ahead and buy their stuff and just whatever, whether I knew I'd like them or not. And Corinne Michaels can be hit or miss for me. I either really like her books or I really am angry at the heroines, because she writes heroines that they're super emotional, they are quick to jump to conclusions, they have gone through a lot of loss and a lot of situations, and they have to fight through it in order to achieve and find love. Now, she sometimes writes characters that are real bitches, that are like, I've had my heart broken, and as a result of me having my heart broken, I am going to shut myself off from love, and I'm going to be a complete asshole to the guy that I am with, and he's going to have to bend over backwards in order to get with me. And enemies to lovers is just not my favorite trope. I just don't like it. And so sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. It has to be done really well for me to really like it. And I don't like a lot of groveling. I like, I guess because I'm the type of person, either you do or you don't. Like, you know, I don't like the in-between stuff. Either we're doing this or we're not doing it. And I don't have a lot of time for in-between stuff. And so the back and forth of, like, I really feel confused and conflicted, but at the same time I want you, but at the same time I don't. And I don't know, like, I don't have time for that in my real life. I don't have time for it in books. Like, I just, like, get over it. Like, either decide or don't decide, but, like, commit to it and go forward. So, with having said that, sometimes I struggle a little bit with her stuff, but I love the pain nonetheless, so I seem to keep going back to her. So, having said that, let's talk about it. This series is the Hennington brothers. There are 4 books in the series, 3 of which are like main books, and then 1 is like a little bit of a novella. It's a crossover series between her and another author, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. The first book of the series is Say, You'll Stay, and this is really fun. This is a contemporary romance. It is a second chance romance, a single parent, small town, definitely steamy love story. This is the story of, and I never remember the main characters' names, I'm just terrible about it, but it's Zach and Presley. And Zach and Presley's story is one in which they were together years prior. They were high school sweethearts, set to be together, destined to be together, and as a result of a series of unfortunate events, and they're events that I hate. It's when you think you know something and you run off and you never, you know, sort of get to allow somebody to explain fully. So I didn't really understand the justification of why Presley left, but Presley leaves for a reason. And she marries another guy. And the book starts off with her husband committing suicide. And he commits suicide and leaves Presley alone with 2 children. And so now she's trying to figure it out. And she finds herself back in this small town of, and I think it's called Buckle Bell, is like the small town in Tennessee, and she is found that she has to deal with Zach again, and they have to confront things that she thought were long put to bed and she thought were long done, and she needs to address those things and maybe atone for those things. And it's small town Tennessee, and so everybody's in everybody's business, and everybody is like knows what's going on, and the parents of these kids are all like up in everybody's business. And so it's a fun story, and I really liked it, and I liked the small town feel, and I liked the found family and close connections. I love the Hennington brothers. There are 3 brothers. They're all super close. They all run the ranch. They are all connected in many ways. And, you know, then it's Presley's story with her best friend and, you know, all of her girlfriends, and they're all sort of coming together in this same small town. So having said that, it's a fun story. It's a fun read. It's definitely, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It's steamy for sure. So if you like small town romances, if you like contemporary romance, if you like second chance, if you like single parent, you know, everybody in here is older, you know, so they're not in their 20s anymore. And so they're all trying to figure it out. I think you're going to really, really enjoy it. So please check this one out. Then the next book in the series is Say You'll Want Me, and this is Wyatt's story, and Wyatt has a backstory of he has loved Presley for a very long time, but because Presley has been with Zach forever and Zach got to her first, he basically has not crossed paths with her. And so this is his story and his sort of determining and realizing that Presley is Zach's girl and they are only going to be just friends. And so he finds love with a significant person in this book. I'm not going to say who it's with, but it is definitely fun. And it is, you know, him discovering who he is and what he wants to do. And he's got that like twang, that southern drawl, and every girl wants him. And the girl that actually lands him has gone through so much loss and so much trauma that she has her heart guarded against any kind of openings for any kind of future. And there is a surprise trope in here. And there are some things that I kind of go like, don't you hide that. You better tell. And so ultimately they do handle it in a really good way and everything is put out there, but it's definitely testing the limits and causing people to, Angie kind of borders a little bit on, I'm like, don't piss me off, because if you piss me off, I'm gonna be upset. But she doesn't. But she kind of gets there, and she does some things that are questionable, and you understand why she does it, because she's been so hurt in her life, and she doesn't want to open up, and she's been lied to many times, and she just assumes that Wyatt is going to be this kind of guy. And that's the thing that I have a problem with Corinne's characters, because Corinne's characters jump to a lot. The women in these books jump to a lot of conclusions about who the guys are and how the guys are going to behave, and it never turns out to be true, but they automatically sort of pigeonhole them into a particular role. And I never like to treat people with a broad brushstroke. I always give people the benefit of the doubt, and in her books there is no benefit of the doubt. It's like every guy is this way and they're always going to be that way, and of course as the story evolves it's never true. But it's frustrating as you read it, because it's just like, oh come on, not everybody is like that. Give somebody a break, you know, like he deserves a little bit of a break. So unless he shows you otherwise that he's a different type of dude, and if he's a different type of dude, then you know what, take him through the ringer, like he deserves it. But these guys are not that. So anyway, I gave it a 4-star. I enjoyed it, but it was a little bit kind of getting on that side where I was a little bit worried, but it's fun nonetheless, and steamy, super steamy. All these books are steamy. Then the next book is Say I'm Yours, and Say I'm Yours is, whew, this one's tough because Trent and Grace have been together for 20 years. And Trent is the type of dude that has strung Grace along forever. And Grace has allowed Trent to treat her any kind of way. And he's done a lot of messed up things to her for 20 years. And the moment that Grace says, I'm done, I'm out, I'm not going to do this anymore, and she decides that she's going to go with another dude, then, you know, Trent wants to step it up. And Grace is like, I'm not having it. And in this moment, I was like, Grace, you go, girl, you go. Because he had 20 years to get it together. And he can't decide at the 10th hour that he's going to step it up. It's too late. It's a day late and $1 short. And so this is a love triangle. And it's a love triangle between Cooper, who is Presley's brother, Trent, and Grace. And it is a triangle for the ages. It is really, really good. I loved it. She did such a good job with it. I was so happy with everything and how it turned out, and it was really, really good, and it was definitely worthwhile. And so I gave it a 4. It's really spicy, it's really steamy, and it's like realistic, and it's very true. And Grace was who she needed to be. She wasn't overly bitchy, but at the same time she held him to account, and she held him in his place, and he needed to be held in his place, and he needed to like atone for some stuff, and he needed to like take a look at what he had done and what he'd lost. Sometimes you just need to deal with it. So I gave it a 4. It's good. And then the last book is Say You Won't Let Go. And Say You Won't Let Go is whomever the outcome of that book is in the love triangle. It's their story, and it's super, super fun. And I'm not going to say anything about it because I don't want to ruin it, but it's it's a little like sort of wrap up novella to like what's been going on. Everybody gets their little story. It's so great. It's so fun. And I gave it a 3 only because it's a novella. It's itty bitty. It's just one little story. And there is a security guy that comes up in here that is a crossover to the apparently the Masters and Mercenaries series that she writes with another author, and I can't remember what the other author is that she writes with it, and I'm not really going to go down that rabbit hole, but it's more contemporary romances, like similar type of tropes and, you know, second chance romance and all of that stuff. And they seemed fun, and they seemed like if you're in the mood for those type of contemporary romances, they would definitely hit the sweet spot. So that is the Hennington Brothers series. So then I decided that I was going to jump off and read her second time around series. And so the first book in that series is We Own Tonight, and this is Heather's book, and this is a group of friends that have been friends since childhood. They've been friends forever together, and they are then meeting these guys that are, so this one starts off where they go to, Heather and all of her girlfriends, they go to a concert that's kind of like a Backstreet Boys concert, like, right? Like we loved them when we were like 14 years old, like we knew all their stories, like the whole thing. We knew their songs, we knew everything. She goes with her friends, Kristen, Nicole, and Danielle. And Kristen, Nicole, and Danielle have been friends for 20 plus years. They've been through everything together. And so they go to this concert, and they're in the front row, and Kristen has gotten divorced. She's in the police force, and she is a police officer, and she has just divorced maybe 5 years earlier. She divorced her husband, Matt, who is also a police officer, and he was just a jerk and an asshole, and just like she needed to get away from him. And so the girls are like, this is your anniversary of being divorced, and girl, you need to get out. We're going to go to a Backstreet Boys. It's not Backstreet Boys, but whatever it is. We're going to a Backstreet Boys concert. They're in the front row, and they are getting drunk and getting toasted and screaming and yelling, and she's like, Eli, I love you, and like, and he's like, and he looks over at her, and she's like, is it me? Did he just hear me? Oh my God. And all her girls like are like, girl, he heard you, like, da, da, da. And in his stick, he like picks one girl out of the crowd to bring her up on stage and like sings this like romantic duet to her. And he does that, and she just like loses her mind, and he whispers in her ear at the end of the thing, he's like, come backstage. And so she's like, what? And so to make a long story short, they meet, and it kind of goes from there, and they have a one-night stand, and the story takes off from there. And that's why it's called We Own Tonight. And it is a fantastic story of friends to lovers, and absolutely a steamy love story. And is this a drunken mistake? Can I open my heart up? And there's also some disability representation in here that was done fantastically. Her sister has Huntington's disease. I have worked with patients that have had Huntington's disease, and the way that they articulate and describe this disorder and this disease is spot on. And it just was fantastic, and I loved it so much. And there was so much, and then also there is MS representation in here, and I have had treated patients with MS, and I just loved the representation and the love story, and it was just beautiful. It was fantastic, it was beautiful, it was really well done, and I loved this book so much, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 star, and it was steamy and spicy nonetheless on top of it. So that was just a bonus. So enjoy that one. And then one last time, this is Kristen and Noah's story. And this is so fantastic. Kristen, like I said, is best friends with Heather. It's a whole group of girls. This is a workplace romance. It's a friends to lovers. It's a single parent, and it's a steamy sort of story. This is about a divorcee who she divorces from her husband. There are some circumstances around her divorcing her husband, and it's really meant to be intense. And she meets this guy she's writing to be a celebrity blogger, and Noah is the sort of premise of her story, and Noah is best friends with Eli, and so Noah has a backstory. And it's interesting because as she's going through her divorce and separating and doing the final proceedings of the divorce, her husband pulls some nonsense we find out that he's been cheating with his secretary, and Noah has a dark past and some things in his past. Even though he is a celebrity actor and a very high profile, there are some things in his past that he wants to keep hidden. And when webs tangle and things get intricate, and there's a suspense, and there's a whodunit, and like what's going on, it really all comes to a head in here. And this comes in an action-packed bang for sure. Now, I love this book because this book ties in one last time, if you've read all of Corinne Michael's books. In her Salvation series, she has 2 characters in her Beloved and Beholden books that appear in this book as well, and it's fantastic. And in that whole Salvation series, Jackson has a security firm and a security company that provides high-level security operatives, and that includes CIA agents and things like that. And so those people in that series, the Salvation series, come up in this book because they're trying to help figure out a mystery of who did what under what circumstances. And it's fantastic. And it's really nice because the characters from the Salvation series, it really is at the end of the series, but before the epilogue, is where we see these people here in this book. And so it's super cool and it's super fun. And so I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. It's really good. I loved it. It's steamy, it's spicy, and it's angsty. All of her books are for angst. She kind of goes over the top with angst, like a little bit too much angst. So I'll be like, dial it back just a little bit. We don't need all that angst. We need it to be somewhat angsty, but not like crazy angsty. And she makes her stuff crazy angsty. But this is really good. Okay, so then the next book in the series is Not Until You, and this is Nicole and Callum's story. And man, this is so good. Nicole she's that girl. She's that friend that's crazy, that is doing a lot. You hear about Nicole doing having threesomes. That's her thing. Threesome. And she makes no bones about it that she loves sex and she loves to have sex, and that's what she's doing. She doesn't care whether you like it or not. She's gonna be her. She has a very angsty relationship with her parents. Her father was a player and a playboy and left her mother with her very early on. And she doesn't have a lot of respect for her mother, and her mother have a difficult relationship. Callum comes from a similar type background, but his father was the player and his mother was left with a broken heart. And so Callum is coming to the States because his father has passed away and he needs to come over and run his father's business. He meets Nicole, at the country club, basically. And he makes an impression on her, but she has had her heart broken, and she really protects her heart from ever loving again, and her story is told. Now, this bordered a little bit on the Indefinite series that I was telling you about, like the character in the Indefinite series that I gave a 1. She guards her heart so much that it's ridiculous. And it gets a little bit where you're just do you even care about anybody but yourself? You seem really selfish. And even her own friends in this book say, you're a bitch. You're rude and you're destructive and whatever. And she's like, that's me, and just you're gonna take me as I come. So for what it is, I really love their story and I really liked it, but I don't like Kristen all that much. So for that reason, I gave it a 2 because I loved Callum and I loved how he was to her, but I felt like he deserved better than Nicole because Nicole was just a bitch. She had no reason to be a bitch. She was just a bitch just to be a bitch. And I'm not down for that. So I gave it a 2 because it just didn't deliver. It was too much angst and it was too over the top and too ridiculous, and just, for me, like I said, hit or miss. I either love it or I don't. And so this one didn't do it for me. So that's what I did with that one. And then the final book in the series is Danielle and Milo, and Milo is Callum's brother. And this one was so fantastic and so amazing. Danielle, this is an office or workplace romance. It's enemies to lovers. It's a British hero, single parent, steamy love story. Doesn't it say it all? And it was Shane East that did the narration, and he has this fantastic British. He's like a Brit with a deep baritone voice. His narrative is spot on. It's perfect. And her life was just on track, and everything was going right until it wasn't, until her husband dies. And when her husband dies, everything falls apart, and that's what this is. And it's so fantastic and so good and so amazing. I loved it. All right, so to go in a completely different direction, just to I'm not going to go into great detail about this. You guys all know about this series. If you don't know about this series and you want me to go into detail, I absolutely can do a review on just these books alone, but I am doing the read-along with Jen and the Book Refuge and all the other girls that have done and decided to jump on Jen's initiative to read all these books in the next year. And so I read Queen of Shadows, and for my first time I did Annotation. I absolutely love it. It is Selena Sardathian, or Elena's sort of her path and towards redemption and towards love and towards salvation and finding magic and figuring out who she is and reclaiming her homeland and doing all the things. This is a 5 out of 5 star. I will go down in my I'll go down in history in loving this book so much and loving the series so much. It's one of my all-time favorite, fantasy romance series. It's fantastic, and I can't say more about it. You guys all know about it. I don't need to go into great detail, but that's the Queen of Shadows. Okay, and so as I had mentioned to you before, I am doing a reading of Karen Rose. You guys have asked me to do romantic suspense. I'm not going to go into great detail about these particular books. I am going to say that the romantic suspense series, which this is a part of, each book surrounds around a particular serial killer who is committing serial crimes in a particular city. What ties the books together are either the FBI agent or the police officers or the city that they're in, that the crimes are being committed. That is the only thing that really ties these books together. So this book is the first book in the series, and it's Don't Tell. And this one is about Mary Grace Winters and Caroline Stewart. And so basically, Caroline has escaped her husband, who was abusive, and she did it by faking her death. And she fakes her death, and she moves from Asheville, North Carolina to Chicago to escape her husband, who is a police officer. And there are multiple sort of operating serial killers and murderers that are going on that are trying to be solved in these books. And it can get confusing, but Karen Rose writes in a way that's really fascinating and interesting, and it pulls you into the story. It's not over the top, it's not really angsty, it's not spicy, it's not sexual, it's none of that. It's just really good core writing, okay? And so Mary Grace, she runs from her husband in Asheville, North Carolina, who's a police officer who has attempted to kill her multiple times. She goes to Chicago, and when she's in Chicago, she's living in a women's shelter, and she becomes very good friends with the woman who's running the shelter. And to make a long story short, after years of being there, she's working at a college and as in the dean's office, and she meets the new dean that comes on board, and his name is Max Hunter. And it's their relationship and their discovery of a second chance at having a relationship, but it's also figuring out the crime that's being done and figuring out who is trying to hunt down Mary Grace, because Mary Grace has changed her name to Caroline Stewart. They find Mary Grace's car in a lake, and the police are trying to figure out what happened to her. And in the midst of that, her husband learns that her car is found, and he figures out that she didn't kill herself, but that she had disappeared. And this is the story, and it's fantastic. It's so good. All of these so far are a solid 4 out of 5. I haven't given them an angst or a spice rating because it's not there. The romance is there, and the steam is there, but it's subtle. But it doesn't need to be there because it's such good writing. Okay, it's such good writing. And so that's Don't Tell. Then the next book in the series is Have You Seen Her? And this is about Special Agent Steve Thatcher, who we were introduced to in this book. And Steve Thatcher and a girl named Jenna Marshall, whom he reached out to for help. And so this is a serial killer that is operating in, and I believe this one takes place in Seattle. And so this is where Steve Thatcher lives. And so there is a serial killer that's operating in the small town that they live in. And he meets Jen Marshall because she is the school counselor, or no, she's a teacher of one of his sons. And he is a widower, and he has a young son that came into play in this book, and he has a middle son and an older son. And the older son, this is his teacher, and the older son is not doing well in school because of the death of his mother and because of the events around the first book, and he is acting out. And so that's how Jen Marshall comes into his life. And so it's the story of their love story, of them getting to know each other and them evolving in their relationship. But at the same time, it's about Special Agent Steve Thatcher discovering who the serial killer is, and so he's trying to figure out who the serial killer is and bring that person to justice. And so this is a solid 4. It's a really good book. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, the writing is really good. The next book is I'm Watching You, and this is about prosecutor Karen Mayhew, and Abe Reagan. We know Reagan from this book over here. He is a police officer, and again, they are falling in love, and it is about a killer that is framing special prosecutor Kristen Mayhew. And so it's a vigilante type killing. So he basically is doing Kristen a favor by bringing all these people to justice that got off on technicalities. And he doesn't feel that it was worthwhile because these are all bad guys and bad criminals. And so as a result, he thinks that they need to be brought to justice, and he's doing it in a very public way. And it is Reagan trying to solve the mystery and understand who the killer is. And it's fantastic. And it's really, really good. It's a fun, like I said, romantic suspense. And I love the ride. And that is this book. And it's a 4 out of 5 star. For sure. And then the next book is Nothing to Fear, and Nothing to Fear is about Dana Dupinsky. And Dana then comes back to she is the woman who runs the shelter where Caroline Stewart fled to, and so she and Caroline are really good friends. So you definitely see cameos from all of the characters over here, including Max Hunter, who is now Caroline's husband. You see him over here as well. And this is Ethan Buchanan, and Ethan Buchanan he's hired as a like a bounty hunter, basically, for a kidnapping. A little boy has been kidnapped, and the woman who kidnapped him brought him to Dana Dupinsky's Chicago shelter from North Carolina, and she is posing as a mother who is running from domestic violence with her son. He is hearing impaired and does not speak as a result of him being hearing impaired, so he cannot tell the shelter what is really going on, and she's keeping him drugged up. And so it is the story of a manhunt and trying to find this woman who has kidnapped this child and why she's kidnapped the child, and what is the story behind why she is seeking revenge and wanting to kidnap this child and take him away from his parents. And it's fantastic, it's fascinating, it's fun, it's fast-paced. The thing I didn't like about this is the audiobook is an abridged audiobook. I cannot stand abridged audiobooks. I don't know why they do this. The next book in the series is also an abridged audiobook, and you just kind of go like, why? Why would you do that? That is so pointless. So it cuts out a really significant part of it because it really builds for character development. You need all of that in the story, and they took it away. Don't understand it, but they did. But it was still good nonetheless, and I gave it a 4. So you guys, this has been an incredibly long video, and it's been frustrating on my side because I had to stop multiple times because my phone has run out of memory, and so I need to replace it. Anyway, having said that, thank you so much for sticking with me. I'm going to ask you to do all the things, which is like and subscribe, and, you know, put a little heart emoji at the bottom, and comment if you've stuck in there with me for the entirety of this video. And if you've read any of these books, please give me your comments. If you have suggestions for other books that you'd like for me to read, please suggest them in the bottom. And that's all that I have for today. So I want to thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye guys!